Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to specifically talk about Ben from Questing Beast's latest video, which really blew up. A lot of people were talking about it because he said some pretty shocking things in this video. And today what I want to talk about is his supposition that the OSR is running with simpler rules, and that this is an advantage over 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, right? Which I was like, what? Like, it is really a shocking statement, but I want to dig into it because there's so much here. All right, so Ben from Questing Beast, he is a major OSR champion. He's very unique because he's young, right? I doubt he's even 35 years old. I would guess maybe 30, right? And the reality is, the vast, tell me if I'm wrong, but like, I'm going to give you 4 examples. DM Bloodworth, DM James, OGGM, Hexpressed. That's 4 dudes right there, right? They're all old dudes, right? Like, you know, OSR. And here's the thing, like, Grognard is like, is frequently attached to the OSR. It literally means old complainer, right? So like, and what's really wild is I don't even know why Ben is included in the OSR. He is absolutely OSR. He holds up the banner for OSR, but he's not old and he's not a complainer. like which is really, I'm like, how did you, like, you sure you got your OSR card, buddy? Because generally OSR is just an old guy complaining about whatever D&D book came out last, right? Like, and going, it's not like it was in the 80s, right? You know. But Ben is brilliant, and his video is linked below. And check this out, man. So he said, hey, listen, the OSR, the reason why we like old school D&D, and by the way, I don't even acknowledge that language. I don't think there is old school D&D. There's simply D&D, right? And yes, I'm aware. Let me stay focused. All right, we're gonna keep going, right? So basically, he said the reason we like old school D&D is like BX, right? We play BX because it's 100 pages, right? And then that 100 pages is essentially equaling the player's handbook and the DMG. And if you hold up the 5e DMG and PHB, that's 500 pages of content. Now, it's actually hard for me to, like, when people talk about, now, first of all, I understand Dungeons & Dragons is outrageously complex. I get that, right? But then when you start comparing the idea that old school Dungeons & Dragons is simpler than new school Dungeons & Dragons, I can't believe that claim is even being bandied about, because I think playing old school Dungeons & Dragons is much more complicated. First of all, now, I don't know if this was I don't think BX had THACO, but like, THACO is outrageously complicated. First of all, you have to do negative math, right? What's -1 minus -2? I don't know. Or like, you know, I ain't been in algebra in 40 years, you know, like, whatever that is, right? So, and yeah, I hear you're like, yeah, rah, 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 rah. Negative math is simple, blah, 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 right? But the reality is, and just to be clear, we love to throw that word around, simple, right? But the reality is, it's incredibly arbitrary and relative, because no one who runs Dungeons & Dragons is even remotely non-intelligent. Like, the most intelligent people in the world are running Dungeons & Dragons, right? So when we say simple, this is a very complex issue to talk about simple, right? And so Ben's supposition is that people like the OSR because the OSR is simpler. And guess what? Ben's not the only one saying it. So first of all, Ben is a brilliant guy, right? He's absolutely every bit as smart as me, if not smarter, right? And you know, you can make that decision on which one of us is smarter. I'll leave that up to you. But he is co-signed in this idea that BX is simpler than 5th edition. And this warps my mind, because a lot of people are like, I can't run D&D 5e. It's just simple. It's not, it doesn't have all the complexity I need. Blah 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 blah. I can't believe we're at a point where the OSR is now claiming to be simpler than 5th edition, because 5th edition has been embraced as one of the simplest editions there's ever been, right? Like, it's just, the stuff that's coming out right now is like, it's a Whirlybird world. We are all over, right? But Ben is saying that the OSR likes, BX and these other games because it's simpler. And Professor Dungeon Master is completely co-signing him and saying, yes, that's exactly right. That's why people like OSR. It's way simpler. There's only 100 pages of rules rather than 500 pages of rules. And if you have less rules, it's way easier to memorize it or to remember it, right? And I was like, what? And so here's where we get to the good part, okay? So I think we are arriving at the truth, right? It's hard. It's hard nowadays. Like, there are no more shared facts. We're just like, and people are debating the most basic things now, right? We just went through the Great Bandy. Like, there were, like, science has been set for a long time, and now everybody's got an opinion, right? Like, nobody's like, I ain't taking your science. But, they're like, oh, I think that's agendaed. And they might not be wrong. They're like, I'm not even questioning if the science is correct. I'm saying it came through a filter of agenda, and now there's something in it, right? And you're like, ooh, that's tough to, come back at, right? Like, it's wild. It's really wild. But here's the truth of it, right? I think I'm shocked at what Ben from Questing Beast is saying, because if you listen to it, right? In the old days, I felt like the OSR was saying, oh, you guys are running 5e to make things simple because you can't handle the complexity of older editions. And now, Ben from Questing Beast is saying, no, OSR is embracing simpler Dungeons & Dragons than 5th E. And so BX is way simpler than Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Which, first of all, I'm shocked he's saying that, right? But it kind of makes sense. And here's why. Who's playing OSR? Old dudes, generally, right? At the 51% level, it is absolutely old dudes. There's one other word I'd throw in there, but I'm going to be polite, right? Like, it's just old dudes playing these OSR games. And what's shocking is now we get to the truth of it, right? OSR, old guys, old grognards are going to BX and staying with BX because they can't handle 5e. Because it has 500 pages of rules, and they literally cannot remember it. Because, like, they're all, like, 50, 60, 70, right? And their memory is slipping, right? So it's starting to come out like that. The OSR is over on the OSR, not for all these weird reasons they're saying, but because their brain literally can't handle 500 pages of rules, right? And which is incredible, right? And I'm like, oh my goodness. And also makes me feel a little bad because, like, you don't want to run at somebody, you don't want to punch down, right? And I don't want to say OGGM. Well, actually, OGGM says all the time that his memory is slipping and that he remembers less and he understands less. And I just thought he was joking. Like, I didn't want to think OGGM's, like, losing his grip. Like, not mentally, not stability-wise, but, like, literally losing facts in his brain, right? I thought he was just joking. But, like, Ben's coming forward and he's like, hey, there's probably a reason that DM Bloodworth, DM James, OGGM, Hexpressed are enjoying these 150-page rules over the current 500-page rules because they only have so much time to remember, right? And resources to remember. And I'm like, holy cow! So is the OSR literally running these shorter rules games because that's all the rules that will fit in their head, right? And not because they're, deficient, but because they're aging. They're literally aging, right? And they're, and they can just hold on to less facts, right? I think that's what Ben was saying, right? Like, and what's even more incredible is I don't know now, right? Was I projecting onto the OSR because they were like, we work harder, like we work hard for our games, and now I realize, like, the more I hear Ben talk about, OSR, they're like, we don't want to deal with all the complexity of 500 pages. And I was really coming at it as like, oh, these guys are, tough, intellectuals. And they're like, they're not afraid of pages, right? And I think Ben's saying the OSR really is afraid of pages. They're afraid of having to remember a lot of rules, and almost ceding ground that the greater intellectuals are on 5e, and that OSR is a great place if you can't remember a lot of facts, right? Like, and I'm like, wow. And this isn't even, this is, you know, and that's an astounding statement, but that's my read. I think Ben from Questing Beast is politely explaining the OSR to us and saying, listen, you know, OSR is for people who don't want to, or is for tier 2 intellects, and 5e is for tier 1 intellects, right? Because we want to remember 100 pages of rules. We don't want to remember 500 pages of rules. That's astounding. That is, it is, and it turns the entire debate on its head, right? So I'll tell you right now, he slid it right in under the wire. I think Questing Beast's OSR explanation may be the most important OSR. The video link below, in my opinion, is the most important OSR video of the year, because it's explaining the OSR to the rest of us. And we thought of them as like these super hardcore, tough intellectuals, but the reality is they're saying no, like, we're people who want 100 pages of rules rather than 500 pages of rules because we can't handle the complexity. And I'm like, wow, like that is my take. I think that's what Ben's saying. All that's my take, right? That's my humble opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think I'm right. I think Ben is showing the truth of it, right? The OSR is for tier 2 intellects, and 5e is for tier 1 intellects, right? And not because, you know, you're, you know, less smart. It's just because you've aged, and we're trying to embrace science. We're trying to believe truths, right? And here's the truth: the older you get, the less you remember. It's like, just, it's a thing, right? Like, it's just, yeah. And if you think I'm wrong, go take a look at Joe Biden, President Joe Biden. Woo! Getting reminded every single day that there's, like, the more you age, yeah, you need 100 pages of rules rather than 500. All that's my humble opinion. I'm eager to hear yours. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.